No, here's a simple example. Let's say a frog with fur, with hair.
Okay, so if I could find an example of a frog with
No, like
fur
dead
or a
cells.
fur-like structure on it,
No,
that
no,
would
no, 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 no,
completely
no, no.
disprove
Hair.
your position?
No, hair.
What? Wait, but
Hold on. Are you specifically asking for a frog with mammalian hair?
I'm talking, like the hair you have on your head?
Yeah,
Like that.
mammalian hair. Because that would disprove evolution because you can't jump across lines like that. Evolution prohibits that.
Why? You're saying because
genes are passed down from parent to child, not across cousins.
you guys know we all came from a fish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So why wouldn't a fish be able to grow hair?
because we're the fish today aren't the same lineage as the fish that humans descended from.
Yeah, but it can still
They're
go down.
different
It can still evolve
No,
down that
but
lineage.
genes
No.
don't get passed.
That lineage is already done. That lineage is already done and over with. They're going to evolve down their own lineage and do their own thing.
Evolution is not about what lineage you want. It's what the environment, through natural selection, tells you what you're going to be.
I mean, if you're talking about what the environment wants, then if growing something similar to mammalian hair will help them survive, then yeah, they'll probably do it, but it still won't be mammalian hair. It'll be their own little hair structure.
Why can't you just say yes? Like, you should be able to grow a frog with hair.
Because we understand evolution more than you do.
And not to mention, every time we do say yes, you keep going, no, that's not it. It has to be this thing,
No.
Going back to the chicken with teeth.
You're the one saying no. It has to be this thing.
No, you're the one who started jumping across lines.
It wouldn't be mammalian hair. It would be amphibian hair. It would be something new that wouldn't necessarily. It would most likely not resemble mammalian hair. But a frog could certainly evolve some sort of cilia or hair-like structure that there's nothing prohibiting that at all.
Oh, Ty Gopher actually posted something in the Discord chat. Apparently, yes, there is a frog that grows hair.
Boom!
No, it doesn't grow hair.
The hairy frog. Trichobacterus robustus.
And I guarantee you that the hair that frog grows is not mammalian hair.
Yeah.
It's not hair like your hair on the head.
It's not mammalian hair, right?
Because evolution works. Right? Because it's something new that didn't evolve in mammals.
It's a new type of hair.
Yeah.
No, because it's not hair.
Okay, you're doing it again. You're doing it again.
There is absolutely no evidence that we could bring up that is consistent with the theory of evolution that you would accept. There's absolutely nothing that we can say.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because the hair on that frog is not like the hair on your head. Those are actually that's living skin. It's not actually hair. I've seen this frog.
Right? It's different from the hair. That's exactly what we predicted.
What are you
That's exactly
about?
what we predicted.
Okay, so we used epithelial cells instead of keratin. So what?
It's not hair like your head on your head. That's what
So
I
That's
want.
what you were saying. That's exactly what we
It's
predicted.
made of keratin.
Again, you're just like that lady who promotes Jilly Juice.
No, because you're not showing me evidence. You're saying, like, look, this living hair that is not hair, I'm going to say it's hair. It's not hair.
By who's definition?
A frog that could evolve a hair-like structure, but it is unlikely
I said
to
hair. I very specifically
And we said that the theory of evolution does not predict that frogs would grow hair.
Yes, but you somehow think that fish will grow hair eventually?
We never said they would.
Our lineage.
What are you talking about, Bubbles?
God.
Do you believe you came from a fish?
This is
we just showed that frogs could evolve a hair-like structure, and the hair-like structure can have all kinds of properties. And why couldn't one of those lineages resulted in mammalian hair, which it did?
Do you believe you came from a fish?
I believe that my ancestral lineage came from fish. Yes.
So by that reasoning,
but not the same fish we have today.
There is nothing against in the evolutionary theory that would prevent a fish from growing hair like the one you have in your head.
Well, over billions of years, and it is improbable to resemble the hair that we currently have.
Yeah. But we would not expect it to be mammalian hair because it's not from that lineage.
No,
Right.
you
It's a probability thing and the amount of time that it takes for the structures to evolve. That takes naturally a very long amount of time for evolution to work.
you don't have enough time.
And the fact that it used a different kind of cell just shows what evolution is all about, because our eyes, the eyes of tetrapods, are made from nerve cells. The eyes of the octopus are made from skin cells, and yet their eyes are just as good as, if not better than ours, and they're that same lens type eye. They're just made a different way because they're from a different evolutionary lineage.
So you don't have any
Bubbles. Have you read The Ancestor's Tale?
Huh? Come again?
It's a good book. I read it when I was in middle school.
Oh yeah, The Ancestor's Tale. It's a good one, yeah.
And
come
it
again?
explains evolution a hell of a lot better than I can.
It's not even here at
Right,
all.
you're mentioning like the common designer argument. Well, the common designer argument would predict that hairy frog that we mentioned earlier, that would be mammalian hair, that it would be actual evidence of a common designer, because that wouldn't match this nested hierarchy structure.
I'm not even calling
Right.
for common designer.
And it's the fact that it's not mammalian hair that shows that it's evolution, that evolution needed a similar structure for a similar purpose, but it took a different path to get there.
Right, but I presume that your position is that the code was written by a designer, right?
Well, the designers doesn't matter. The thing what matters is
Okay.
that they're similar. They're using the same code.
But they're not.
You're-
But they're
You're
not. You just
taking-
said the hair on the frog is not the same as the hair on the mammal. You just said that. You just acknowledged that.
Well, that's
Right.
not hair.
I mean,
Right, that's what we're saying. It's not hair.
if you're defining hair specifically as mammalian hair made from keratin instead of epithelial cells, then you're right. It's not hair. And that's the point. Because if it was the same designer using the same design, and the same designer used the same design, and that's where all the similarities are, why isn't it mammalian hair?
Because no, that disproves your evolution theory.
If it were mammalian hair, it would.
If it were mammalian hair, it would disprove it.
The design.
Why would the designer come up with the same kind of hair for all of these different mammals, but not for this frog?
Because clearly frogs were created separately from other species or something. Other
Because the
mammals.
hair
They're
evolved
not a mammal.
independently. Because the hair evolved independently, and the hair from mammals all comes from a common ancestor.
No, if you really believe your evolutionary theory, that frog hair will eventually turn to real hair.
No, it won't.
Look, you're
There's
deliberately
nothing. No. That would
misunderstanding
disprove
him.
evolution. That would disprove evolution.
Why? Look, you believe we came from fish. Why is it hard? Why is it harder for a frog to grow hair?
Ancient fish are not the same as modern fish.
Right.
Evolution doesn't have a goal in mind. It doesn't have a preconception of what sort of
You
structures to do. It just follows the path of least resistance, and these new structures evolve. And the odds that the hair that a frog evolves would resemble, that would be identical to the hair that mammals evolved is vanishingly improbable. It's extremely improbable, because you would have to basically match the exact same genes. And that's why I knew that the hair that was on that frog, because I had never heard of a hairy frog before, but when whoever mentioned that there was a hairy frog, I knew that the hair on that frog wouldn't be mammalian. How did I know that it wasn't going to be mammalian hair?
Because we said before anyone actually came up with the frog that if that happened, it would not be mammalian hair. Before anyone came up with that. Neither Fourth Root nor I had ever heard of this frog before someone posted a link to it.
But somehow a fish can eventually grow hair, but a frog can never eventually grow hair.
They can evolve their own versions of hair, but there's no reason why they would match, why they would be identical. We knew they probably would not be.
There's no reason
They would
why
not be identical.
There's no reason why it shouldn't evolve hair.
Right, there's no reason why it shouldn't evolve hair. So it did evolve hair, but it's not the exact same kind of hair.
Okay, different example. The fins on cetaceans, whales, and dolphins. They look a lot like the fins on fish because that's convergent evolution. They came for a same purpose. But since it had been so long since the mammalian ancestors of cetaceans had been fish, they had evolved the tetrapod limb, which is a completely different structure. And so if you look at the bones of a cetacean fin, it more resembles like the paw of a monkey or something like that than it does if you look at the actual skeleton of a fish fin. Because even though they're superficially the same, that they're from the outside, evolution is just adapting with what it had. And so cetaceans had tetrapod limbs, and so that's what they adapted to use as fins.
Yeah, not to mention tail fins on fish are vertical, whereas tail fins on cetaceans are horizontal.
Well, and it's also like if you look at the way a shark or other fish swims, they undulate from side to side. Cetaceans undulate up and down the way a mammal does when running across the land. It's the same idea.
So you think you can turn a fish into a frog?
No, because that's a branch that's already happened. Frogs have already evolved. It could evolve into an amphibious creature that resembles a frog. But it would not have the same genes as a frog. It probably wouldn't even have the same bone structure as a frog.
I mean, given enough
I
time...
think the misunderstanding here is coming from the assumption that hair was some sort of preconceived concept before hair evolved. No, the concept of the hair was created by people to describe what they saw, right? So hair did not exist until it evolved. Right, so and it evolved in mammals, and then there was this frog that evolved its own hair-like structure, and I knew that it wasn't going to be anything like mammalian hair because I knew that even though it functions the same, there isn't some sort of predefined structure that it's aiming to go to create. There's just a general advantageous structure that it will create in a totally different way.
In my opinion, a better way of saying it is, could it have been, say, you have a frog and it for some reason develops something similar to hair, or even just straight up hair. There is a chance, albeit very small, for a frog to develop mammalian hair. There's a chance, it's teeny tiny, but it's there, but it's so unlikely. It's so out there, so far-fetched that it...
I mean, because according to evolution, this should be the transitional period.
Mammalian hair is one way of making hair. There might be, 20 billion ways of making hair, and so when a frog needs to make hair or a hair-like structure, the chances that it will pick the exact structure of mammalian hair are so remote, and it has no reason to try to direct itself to that. It's going to get the first thing it comes across that's, hair-like enough to work and go with that.
But, guys, it's 8. I gotta go.
Okay. Yeah, we got to wrap this up in a few minutes, too, because... But thanks so much for making this a really entertaining live stream, so much that we went over an hour.
I loved how that hairy frog thing played out because he brought it up. He's all like, well, can a frog get hair? And we're all like, and I said, well, a hot frog certainly could evolve a hair-like structure. And
I specifically said, but it wouldn't be mammalian hair. I specifically said that.
Right? And then one of you looked up a hairy frog and, oh yeah, there is a frog here that has a hair-like structure and it's not mammalian hair. What do you know?
Yeah, I wasn't. I just looked it up because I was like, there probably isn't, but I'm gonna look it up anyway. And I'm like, oh.
I mean, good find. Good find. I'm gonna put this link for the hairy frog in the chat because I think it archives the chat. Hang on a second.
I would suggest, Shane, that you edit some of this down to just the parts about the hairy frog because that just played out so beautifully.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to find it. I'm like, hey, I wondered.
It was perfect.